Many men focus on calories while overlooking stress and sleep, even though those factors often have a greater impact on belly fat. By this point in the series, it should be clear that metabolism is regulated by signals, not just intake. What matters most is not how much energy enters the system, but how the body interprets demand, threat, and recovery. Stress and sleep strongly influence that interpretation. When the body experiences ongoing stress, it shifts priorities. Energy is redirected toward immediate needs rather than long-term balance. This shift is coordinated by hormonal signaling, particularly cortisol, which interacts closely with insulin and fat storage. Cortisol does not directly create fat. Instead, it changes how energy is handled. It increases short-term glucose availability while promoting energy storage and limiting access to stored fat. This shift is adaptive in the short term. It prepares the body to respond to perceived challenge. But when stress signals remain elevated, this adaptation becomes persistent rather than temporary. This effect is especially pronounced in the abdominal region. Visceral fat tissue is more hormonally active and more responsive to stress-related signals than subcutaneous fat. It contains more receptors for cortisol and insulin, making it a preferred storage site when the body repeatedly perceives demand without sufficient recovery. This is why belly fat often increases even when calorie intake has not changed significantly. Sleep plays a similar regulatory role, but through a different pathway. Sleep is not simply rest. It is a critical period for metabolic recalibration. During sleep, stress hormones decline, insulin sensitivity improves, inflammatory signals quiet, and energy regulation resets. When sleep is shortened or fragmented, this reset is incomplete. Cortisol remains elevated longer into the next day. Insulin sensitivity declines. Hunger signals become less precise. Energy availability becomes more variable. The body compensates by favoring storage and reducing access to stored fuel. Importantly, these changes can occur without any change in calorie intake. This explains why many men notice increased abdominal fat during periods of poor sleep or chronic stress, even when diet and activity remain consistent. Stress and insufficient sleep both reduce metabolic flexibility. When flexibility is reduced, the body becomes less capable of switching between fuel sources. Stored fat becomes harder to access. The system relies more heavily on frequent intake to maintain energy stability. In this context, calories matter less than regulation. Two men can consume the same number of calories and follow similar routines, yet experience very different fat distribution depending on stress exposure, sleep quality, and recovery capacity. This difference is not behavioral, it is physiological. Another reason stress and sleep have such a strong effect on abdominal fat is timing. Stress signals and sleep disruption often act continuously, not episodically. They influence metabolism across the entire day and night, not just during meals. This creates a persistent background signal that shapes energy handling over time. Calorie intake, by contrast, is intermittent. It arrives in discrete events. Stress and poor sleep alter the context in which those calories are processed. When stress is high or sleep is insufficient, the body interprets incoming energy differently. Storage becomes prioritized, especially in hormonally sensitive tissue. Access to stored fat becomes less reliable. This means the same calorie intake can lead to different outcomes depending on the regulatory environment. Over weeks and months, this environment matters more than isolated dietary choices. The body adapts to the signals it receives most consistently. Because stress and sleep act upstream of intake, their effects accumulate quietly. They influence where fat is stored, how easily it is released, and how stable energy feels from day to day. This is why abdominal fat often reflects long-term regulatory strain rather than short-term excess. Calorie-focused explanations fail to account for these signals. They cannot explain why belly fat is persistent, resistant, and closely tied to stress and sleep patterns. Understanding this reframes the problem. It shifts attention away from constant restriction and toward regulation. In the next video, I will explain why insulin sits at the center of this entire process, and how chronic insulin signaling reshapes fat storage, energy access, and metabolic flexibility over time. On this channel, I explain metabolism using medical science. This video is for educational purposes only. This is not medical advice. Always consult your physician.